Assalamu alaikum, good day. One more episode of What the Fatah. You know, sometimes good things come from places where you least expect. You try looking for good news, and the good news sometimes appears on channels that you least expect to ever report something. And sometimes from countries where one never expects that rational thinking would, or from where the leaders would say things that would inspire you. I'm now in my 70s, and I've rarely ever heard something from Saudi Arabia that has inspired me. And I've always watched, I've lived there 10 years, and wonderful people, and I've always watched what comes out of the kingdom with a bit of suspicion, because after all, that is the source of much of the teachings of Wahabbi and their view of Islam from a very narrow perspective that is in contradiction to what, say, people of India or Iran and Turkey or other places have about and they view Islam differently, especially in Indonesia or Western Africa or even Latin America. But last week, something happened that absolutely floored me. I've been hearing news that in Saudi Arabia now, when you land at Jeddah airport, you see women behind the counters at immigration centers, at passport offices. This is something I could never have imagined would happen in that kingdom. Women driving cars. Events taking place that are, by any terms, quote unquote, secular and would offend the religious police that used to dominate Saudi Arabia when I lived there. And then there was news that the Crown Prince, Prince Salman bin Abdullah, has introduced Saudi students to the study of Ramayana and Mahabharat. This was completely, like, I doubt if India's neighbors, Pakistanis, can ever imagine. They can't even spell Ramayana. They don't even know what Mahabharat is. And yet Saudi Arabia, under its new ruler, albeit through a kingdom, has decided that knowledge coming out from Hindustan or Bharat was something that needs to be taught to the Arab youth. And once that shock was, a pleasant shock, had not yet settled in, when we find out that Crown Prince Abdullah, Salman bin Abdullah, or MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, I'm sorry, there's so many of them, but MBS is a better word to address him, told an interviewer that he views much of what is written in the Haddis of Imam Bukhari and Muslim as redundant. He said people who wrote what the Prophet said 280 years after the Prophet had died can best be described as untrue, and if at all have to be relied upon, should be one rule of Hadith, that is that there has to be a straight line of people agreeing upon it over multiple generations. It was a very mild way of telling the Muslim populations around the world, for heaven's sake, wake up. He said the Quran is the constitution of Saudi Arabia, fair and well, but the laws that are being implemented that are not present in the Quran will not be used to define Saudi law. This is phenomenal by any standards. Does it mean that now Saudi Arabia is not going to support the claim that Israel does not have a right to exist on Jewish land? Because the Quran does say very explicitly that to the Jews that we gave you a piece of land and don't leave it, don't abandon it. And so here we have coming from a place where only orthodoxy or lack of rationalism has availed, I would suggest a new class of young Saudis, perhaps because all the mothers are educated and not locked up in their homes, because most of the generation that produced sons like MBS were educated in Western universities in social sciences. Of course, they didn't go there to study nuclear physics or something like that, but definitely political science, sociology, archaeology. They studied scholars like Ibn Khaldun or Ibn Sina, or Kindi, and understood that all through Islam, people have come up and resisted and fought for rationalism. And there is a bright history of it at the end of the 9th century. The Mutazilites, the people who went even to the extent of saying that the Quran is the written word, it is not the revealed word. Of course, they had the head slaughtered by the other side. That's the story of that's all of Muslim history. But MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, the ruler of Saudi Arabia, has taken a direction that might be the end of all the redundancy and the backwardness that comes out of, say, for example, Indian madrasas. The Deobandis and the Barelvis and all the killing and the backwardness and the burqa and the restriction of women, the 4 marriages, all of them are even sanctioned by the Quran, yet it is the thought process that says enough is enough. That permission has been granted to treat slaves, that does not mean we have slaves. We've abandoned slavery for more than a century, at least a couple of centuries, at a time when all of African slavery was handled by Muslims selling black Africans to Europeans. And the tragedy, the fact that it is never mentioned or never discussed is a separate story. That's how we cover things up. But thank God for Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, there is hope that even in the most orthodox places of Islam, bright ideas can come forward, women can be recognized as equals, and it would not mean that your throat would be slit if you discussed and talked about Islam. In much of Pakistan, or definitely in India or Afghanistan and Iran, such a question being raised would have meant the person would have to flee his country. There are examples of people who raised such similar issues in the United States and they were assassinated. One of the days you'll hear somebody got to me too. And I live with that on an everyday basis, because that is the natural outcome of a teaching that says, kill those who question, or that people who think about issues like this need permission from much older clerics to say what is called taqleed, or the thought as to what is happening. The good news, my brothers and sisters, is somebody as powerful as Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is on your side. And if Saudi Arabia changes its direction towards the more positive, trust me, the United Arab Emirates will follow. They already have. There's a chance the civil war in Yemen would come to an end. There's a bigger chance that the Saudi Arabians who funded much of the religious extremist mosques in North America will find it difficult to find state money towards there. Of course, private financiers still give their zakat, and that's millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and distribute it to people who claim and that they are working for Islam, and they operate the mosques where much of the hate is treated, is spoken about. I've shared, khutbahs in Canada where the Imam is saying it is just for us, it is right for us as Muslims to hate Jews in Friday sermons. So we have a big challenge ahead, but thank God for little mercies that He showers on us in the shape of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Until next time, thank you very much for being with me. Khuda Hafiz, Fi Amanillah, Jai Shri Ram.